My parents tracked my son like a criminal. I made sure they'd never forget Reddit stories. For son's 8th birthday, my parents gift him Labubu. He has fun with it then. Said, "Daddy, why red light blinking?" So I checked inside and went pale. I stayed silent, prepared everything. Days later, police were at their door. "Hi, I'm Daniel, 34, software engineer," and the moment my 8-year-old son held up a pink collectible toy and said, "Dad, why is there a red light blinking inside?" my entire world tilted sideways like someone had kicked out a support beam. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was on the couch debugging a server crash that refused to behave, half drinking the same cup of coffee I'd microwaved twice already. My son, Jonah, was building a Lego spaceship beside me, standard weekend vibes, until he proudly lifted that pastel pink blob of a toy. "Look. Grandma and Grandpa sent it. Cute. Harmless. A little overpriced, like every kid trend ever." Then he squeezed it again, and there it was, a tiny pulsing red glow deep inside the eye socket. My first thought was, weird battery defect. My second thought was, defects don't pulse. My third thought hit me like cold water down the back. I know that light. I've built security systems around that light. "Hey, bud," I said calmly, even though my stomach had already dropped through my shoes. "Can I see that for a sec?" He handed it over without hesitation. Kids are incredible that way. They trust until you give them a reason not to. I walked it under a lamp, tilted it, and there, just for a split second, the red LED winked at me like it knew something I didn't. Infrared. Low power. Stealth design. I used to design almost the exact same modules at my last job. Only ours weren't glued inside children's toys. "When did this arrive?" I asked. "This morning." With a card. It said, "Happy early birthday, Jonah." His birthday was 8 days away. "Not today." I kept my voice steady. "Cool. I'm gonna borrow this for a little bit. Might need to fix the battery." "Okay." He shrugged and went back to building a laser cannon. I took the toy to the garage. Closed the door. Locked it. Then I sat on the workbench in absolute silence, staring at the blinking red dot inside a cheap plastic toy that my parents, my polite, mild-mannered, suburban parents, had mailed to my son. I didn't smash it. I didn't panic. I didn't even swear. I just grabbed my precision tools, cracked the seam open, and revealed every parent's nightmare in circuit board form: a camera, a mic, a transmitter, a lithium battery modded for long-term use. And the timestamp? Activated at 7:14 a.m., exactly 1 hour after Jonah opened the box. Someone had been watching my son. Listening to him. Streaming him. My parents sent the toy. But they sure as hell didn't send just a toy. I closed the casing carefully, placed the device into a sealed evidence bag, labeled it, signed it, dated it. Because I wasn't calling them. Not yet. First I needed evidence. Because the war had already started. I just discovered my parents were the enemy. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of fear, out of calculation. My brain shifted into engineer mode, the place where panic dies and flowcharts are born. There's something soothing about a problem, even a horrifying one, when you start converting it into action items. Step 1, protect Jonah. Step 2, collect evidence. Step 3, don't alert the suspects. Step 4, detonate strategically. That last step came from experience. You don't grow up as the son of Robert and Marlene Pierce without learning that retaliating too early only teaches them how to hit you harder next time. Jonah stayed blissfully unaware. He played, he laughed, he asked for snacks. Meanwhile, I spent the next 3 days sweeping the house like a man who developed a sudden passion for interior architecture. The next device showed up in Jonah's blue dinosaur backpack. At first I felt proud, I'd called it. Then I felt sick, because this one was worse. It wasn't a camera. It was a GPS tracker. Thin. Adhesive-backed. blinking softly like a mechanical heartbeat. They'd been tracing every trip we made: school, grocery store, playground, doctor's office. I photographed it in place, gloved up, bagged it, labeled it Exhibit B. 2 devices meant intent. 2 devices meant planning. 2 devices meant my parents were not improvising, they were executing. But the real punch in the throat came the following morning. I dropped Jonah off at school, returned to my car, and saw a missed call from my mother. I answered on the 3rd ring. Normal voice, casual tone. Hey, Mom. Oh, sweetheart. Did Jonah get our package? Every part of me wanted to scream. You watched him open it, didn't you? But I kept my voice level. He loved it. I lied. Carries it everywhere. A pause. A subtle one. Like she was waiting to hear something I wasn't giving her. That's wonderful, she said too brightly. Listen, maybe we could stop by this week? We really miss Jonah. There it was. The beginning of the squeeze. I'll check my schedule, I said. Her tone sharpened. You've been saying that for months, Daniel. We're family. We shouldn't need an appointment. My knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. I'll text you, I repeated. A long inhale. She didn't like that. Control slipping from her hands was the one thing she never handled well. All right, she said, voice cooling like metal in water. Talk soon. She hung up. Jonah wasn't even in the car, and still I felt the instinctive urge to check that he was safe. They were watching. They were planning. And now they were getting impatient. Which meant they were going to make their next move soon. I drove straight from the school to the cybercrimes unit at the police department, evidence bags in hand, chain of custody log filled out, everything airtight. Detective Alvarez listened. Examined the toy through the plastic. Studied the GPS tracker like she already hated whatever story I was about to tell. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said something I'll never forget. Mr. Pierce, this wasn't curiosity. This wasn't accident. Someone is building a case against you. I nodded once. I know. For what? I already knew that too. But saying it out loud felt like swallowing gravel. Custody, I said quietly. They want Jonah. Detective Alvarez's expression hardened. Then let's make sure they never get close. She opened a new case file. I placed Exhibits A and B neatly on her desk. And just like that, the countdown to the real battle began. By Wednesday afternoon, everything detonated at once. I wish I could say I was surprised. But if there's one thing I've learned about my parents, it's this. They don't escalate gradually. They jump straight to nuclear. It started at 2:14 p.m. I was in the middle of a code review when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. The courthouse. Family division. My stomach dropped so fast it could have cracked the floor. Mr. Pierce, the clerk said, this is to inform you that an emergency petition for third-party custody of your son has been filed by Robert and Marlene Pierce. Your hearing is Friday at 9 a.m. I gripped my desk. On what grounds? There is an affidavit from the child's mother stating concerns about your emotional stability. My first thought, impossible. My second, oh God, they got to her. Can you send me the affidavit? I asked, though I already knew it would ruin my afternoon. It arrived in my inbox 5 minutes later. Signed by my ex-wife, Lena. Dated 2 weeks ago. The same week the camera activated. The same week the GPS tracker started pinging. That timing wasn't a coincidence. It was choreography. I read the lines with numb hands. Daniel has been increasingly withdrawn. He refuses contact between our son and his grandparents. I am worried he cannot provide adequate emotional stability. I believe Jonah may be safer with his grandparents temporarily. It was so incredibly out of character for her that I knew immediately she hadn't written a word of it. But she had signed it. And in family court, that signature was gasoline. I called her. She picked up on the second ring, voice soft and oblivious. Hey, Daniel. Everything okay? Did you sign an affidavit saying I'm unstable? A full 3 seconds of silence. Oh God, she whispered. Daniel, I didn't know that's what it was. What did they tell you it was? They said it was a consent form. To allow your parents' insurance to cover therapy for you. They said you'd been struggling. I thought I was helping. I closed my eyes. They played her. Classic Robert and Marlene move, weaponized and naive. Lena, you need to retract it. Today. I will. I swear. I'm so sorry. But even her retraction wouldn't erase the damage. The judge would see a signed statement, and no amount of oops fixes the impression it creates. I hung up and drove straight to my attorney's office. Marcus didn't even pretend to sugarcoat it. This is what they were building toward, he said. The camera wasn't about Jonah. The tracker wasn't about Jonah. They were gathering ammunition against you. And the money, I said flatly. He nodded. And the trust fund. He typed rapidly, drafting our response to the petition, then stopped and looked up. Daniel, you understand what this hearing is. This isn't mediation. This isn't a conversation. Your parents are asking the court to remove your son from your custody. If the judge believes even half of their claims. She won't, I said. Not when we show her what they've done. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't the kind of lawyer who hesitated. Daniel, he said carefully, I need to ask you something plainly. Once we show the judge the devices, the surveillance, the timestamps, once we play the recording, you understand what's going to happen to your parents? I nodded slowly. Good, I said. Because this isn't about punishment. I leaned forward, voice steady, clear, lethal. This is about making sure they never get another chance. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then Friday, he said, we end it. I left his office into the cold evening air, head buzzing, heart hammering, resolve hard as steel. The hearing was 2 days away. But the war? The war had already reached its midpoint. And the next move was mine. Friday morning felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Silent. Still. False. I woke before my alarm, made coffee I barely tasted, packed the evidence folder, and checked on Jonah, still asleep, breathing soft, clutching that battered stuffed fox he'd had since he was 2. He had no idea that in 3 hours, his grandparents would try to take him away from me. Good. He shouldn't have to know. Lena met me in the courthouse lobby. She looked wrecked, hair unbrushed, eyes red, holding a notarized statement retracting everything she'd signed. Daniel, I'm so sorry. They manipulated me. I didn't know. You're here, I said. That's what matters. At 8:52 a.m., the hallway outside courtroom 4B shifted. The door opened. My parents stepped out of the elevator with their lawyer. My father, stiff shoulders, jaw clenched. My mother, soft smile plastered on, that practiced, grandmotherly sweetness she used like a weapon. The moment she saw me, she lifted her hand in a little wave. As if this were brunch. As if she hadn't planted spy tech in my child's bedroom. As if she hadn't tried to strip me of custody. Her lawyer approached ours. We're open to a settlement, he said. Joint custody. Gradual transition to full grandparent guardianship. No court battle needed. Marcus barked out a laugh loud enough that people turned. Absolutely not. My father stepped forward, voice dripping magnanimous condescension. Son, let's not make this worse than it needs to be. Just admit you're overwhelmed. Let us help you. I looked at him and felt nothing. No fear. No guilt. Just clarity. We'll see what the judge says, I replied. And I walked into the courtroom. The hearing. Judge Evelyn Hartman took the bench at 9:03 a.m. 60s. Cold eyes. Zero tolerance for bullshit. Perfect. My parents' lawyer went first. Your Honor, this is a concerned grandparent's petition. Mr. Pierce. He gestured to me. Has shown emotional instability, isolation tendencies, and refusal of family support. The child's mother has expressed concern. Actually, Your Honor, Marcus cut in smoothly. The mother is present and would like to clarify. The judge turned to Lena. Ms. Rivera? Lena stood, voice quiet but steady. The affidavit I signed was misrepresented to me. Daniel is a good father. I was misled. The judge raised a brow at my parents' lawyer. He cleared his throat awkwardly. We were proceeding based on good faith understanding. Yeah. Sure. Then it was my parents' turn. My mother went full performance mode, trembling voice, handkerchief, quivering lip. I'm just terrified for my grandson. Daniel's been so distant. We barely see Jonah anymore. He isolates him. We fear for his emotional well-being. My father chimed in with fake gravitas. Your Honor, I'm not saying my son is unfit. He's just overwhelmed. And the trust fund. Judge Hartman's head snapped up. What trust fund? My father froze. Their lawyer shot him a glare that could have melted steel. But it was too late. The judge leaned forward, predator slow. Mr. Pierce, I would strongly suggest you choose your next words very carefully. My father swallowed. Just financial support for Jonah's future. Marcus rose. Your Honor, if the court permits, we're ready to present evidence. Proceed, she said. The reveal. Marcus set the first evidence bag on the table. This, he said, is the stuffed toy the petitioners sent Jonah. Inside is a hidden camera and microphone. A ripple moved through the courtroom. My mother's face strained of color. My father stiffened like he'd been shot. Marcus continued, voice calm, surgical. Forensic analysis confirms 67 hours of footage recorded inside Mr. Pierce's home. Linked to an email address belonging to the petitioners. He handed up the forensic report. Judge Hartman skimmed it, her expression shifting from disbelief to fury. Then Marcus placed the second evidence bag. Additionally, we found a GPS tracker hidden inside Jonah's backpack, tracking every location he visited for the past 3 weeks. My mother whimpered. We only wanted. Judge Hartman slammed her gavel once. Silence. Marcus delivered the kill shot. And finally, Your Honor, we have audio of the petitioners discussing their intention to obtain custody in order to gain access to the child's trust fund. He pressed play. My father's voice filled the courtroom. That money should be family money. Once we have custody, we can use it properly. My mother's voice followed, cold, calculated. We're not asking Daniel. We're doing what's best for him. When the recording ended, the judge looked at them as if they were radioactive. Mr. and Mrs. Pierce, she said quietly. Stand. They did. Hands shaking. Faces chalk white. This petition was fraudulent, malicious, and built on criminal behavior. You exploited the child's mother. You surveilled a minor. You attempted to manipulate this court for financial gain. She lifted her pen. Petition denied with prejudice. My mother burst into tears. My father's jaw twitched. The judge wasn't done. I am issuing an immediate restraining order. You are barred from contacting Daniel or Jonah in any form. Furthermore, I am forwarding this to the district attorney for criminal charges. My mother made a strangled noise. My father stared ahead, as if his consciousness had evacuated. Bailiffs approached them. Your Honor, their lawyer stammered. Surely. She didn't even look up. Next case. We walked out of the courtroom victorious. But it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like the moment a bone finally sets correctly after being broken. Painful. Necessary. Stronger after. Lena hugged Jonah's jacket she'd been holding. Daniel, you saved him. I didn't answer. Because the truth was simpler. I did what any parent does when someone threatens their child. I protected him. Completely. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe. The Monday after the hearing felt deceptively normal. Jonah was at school, drawing rockets and planets. I was at my desk, staring at lines of code that refused to stay in focus. The world looked the same, but everything underneath it had shifted. At 11:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stepped into the hallway before answering. Mr. Pierce? Detective Hall from Denver County. My pulse dropped into my stomach. We wanted to inform you, she continued. Warrants have been issued for your parents' arrest. We're executing now. I closed my eyes. Understood. Thank you. She paused. Given the sensitive nature, I thought you deserved to hear it first. Before I could reply, she hung up. I didn't go home. Didn't go to the station. Didn't call anyone. Instead, I drove to Jonah's school and parked across the street. I didn't want him involved. I didn't want him scared. But I needed to see it end. 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled past. Quiet. Professional. No sirens. They pulled into my parents' driveway. I stayed in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly the leather creaked. Through the trees, I saw my father open the door. He said something I couldn't hear. Then a detective stepped forward, presented the warrant. My father's face strained. My mother emerged behind him, trembling. When the cuffs went on, she cried out, a sharp, desperate keening I had heard only once before in my life. The night her own father died. But she hadn't cried that way when she placed a camera in my child's bedroom. 2 officers escorted them to separate vehicles. My mother sobbing. My father hollow-eyed. Neighbors peeked through blinds, exchanging whispers that would morph into rumors by dinner. I didn't move. Not until the cruisers turned the corner and disappeared. Only then did I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside me for months. A release. A collapse. A rebirth. I whispered into the empty car. It's done. But it wasn't. Not yet. 3 weeks later, the school called. Mr. Pierce, this is Principal Hess. Your mother attempted to pick Jonah up. The world went sharp. Cold. Metallic. What? I said. There's a restraining order. I know. We stopped her. Police are on their way. I was already moving. Sprinting to my car. Heart hammering. When I arrived, Jonah was in the main office drawing a giraffe. Completely unfazed. Grandma had told the secretary she was taking him to his dentist appointment. They almost believed her. Almost. Principal Hess intercepted me in the hallway. We're so sorry. She was extremely insistent. Outside, in the parking lot, police were loading my mother, hair wild, tears streaking her face, into the back of a cruiser. She saw me through the window. Pressed her hands against the glass. Let me see him. Please. He's my grandson. I stared back. Unmoved. When she mouthed why, I almost answered. Instead, I turned around and walked away. Jonah tugged my sleeve. Dad, why is Grandma crying? I knelt. Because she broke the rules, I said gently. And when grown-ups break rules, there are consequences. Oh. He considered this. Can we get ice cream? I laughed despite everything. Yeah, bud. We can get ice cream. Sentencing. 2 weeks later, the judge revoked my mother's probation. 30 days in county jail. 10-year restraining order. My father, still on probation, was ordered into mandatory counseling. No contact. No exceptions. Marcus called when it ended. That's the end of it, Daniel, he said. Legally, emotionally, practically. They won't risk violating this again. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the sunlight on the floor tiles. I know. You won, you understand that? He said softly. I didn't want to win, I replied. I wanted my son safe. Same thing. Healing. 6 months later, Jonah finished another session with Dr. Harwell, the child psychologist. He's doing remarkably well, she said. His anxiety around extended family has decreased. He's confident. Secure. You've done exactly what he needed. I exhaled, slow, shaky. Good. You're a good father, Daniel. I didn't answer. Because some days I believed it. Some days I didn't. But Jonah was thriving. And that was enough. The final piece. One Saturday morning, while cleaning the garage, I came across the sealed evidence box the police returned after the case closed. Inside, the Labubu toy, the GPS tracker, the printed screenshots of cloud storage logs, the report with my father's email and timestamps, photos of Jonah's bedroom from the camera they planted. I felt my chest tighten. Jonah wandered in, holding a juice box. What's that? Just old stuff, I said. Nothing important. He spotted the Labubu. Oh, the pink one. Can I have it? I liked it. My stomach twisted. No, bud, I said softly. That one's broken. Oh. Then can we throw it away? I hesitated. Then nodded. Yeah. Let's throw it away. We walked outside together. I dropped the toy into the trash bin and closed the lid with a final, definitive thud. Jonah tilted his head. Are you sad, Dad? I looked at him, the reason for every decision I'd made. No, I said. Just remembering. Remembering what? That some things look nice on the outside, I said, but aren't safe on the inside. He frowned thoughtfully. Like strangers? I smiled. Exactly. He grinned. Well, I'm glad you protect me. My throat tightened. Always, I said. Always. 1 year later. Jonah turned 10. He played soccer now, midfield, fast, determined. During one game, another dad sat beside me. Your kid's solid, he said. He's happy. Really happy. You're doing a good job. I swallowed, watching Jonah sprint down the field, laughing as the wind caught his hair. Thanks, I said. A year ago, he flinched when someone gave him a gift. A year ago, he woke up from nightmares about people coming into his room. A year ago, he asked if Grandma and Grandpa would take him away. Now, he ran free. Unafraid. Safe. Because I made sure of it. Because I didn't break. Because I didn't forgive what shouldn't be forgiven. And when he's older? One day Jonah will ask what really happened. Why his grandparents disappeared. Why they aren't in photos anymore. Why we don't visit them on holidays. I'll tell him the truth. Not all at once. Not with bitterness. But plainly. Honestly. Because he deserves that. And because he'll understand. Some gifts come with strings attached. And some strings are meant to be cut. You'd think after the arrests, after the restraining orders, after the courtroom humiliation that cratered whatever reputation my parents had left, things would finally quiet down. And they did. For almost 5 months. Long enough that I almost believed the universe had finally given me a reprieve. Long enough that Jonah stopped checking the window when a car drove by. Long enough that I started sleeping through the night again. Then the letters began. Not phone calls. Not texts. Letters. Handwritten. Careful. Almost elegant. My mother's handwriting. Always addressed to Jonah. Never to me. But they arrived at my house, which meant she knew she couldn't legally give them to him, but she was still playing the loophole game. The first one was simple. Hi, sweetheart. Grandma loves you. I miss you so much. I'm getting better. One day we'll see each other again. No apology. No accountability. Not a single acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just emotional bait wrapped in grandmotherly perfume. I didn't show Jonah. I logged it, scanned it, dropped it in a sealed folder, emailed a copy to Marcus, and placed the physical letter in my filing cabinet. The second letter came 2 weeks later. The third 3 days after that. By the 7th, even the mailman gave me a sympathetic look. Rough situation? He asked quietly. I just nodded. If only he knew. But the letters weren't the problem. The problem came on a quiet Sunday morning in May. Jonah was in the living room building a Lego spaceship. I was making pancakes in the kitchen when a car slowed in front of our house. I didn't recognize the model at first. Old, beige, dented along the side, the kind you forget the second you stop looking at it. But I recognized the face inside. My father. Older. More gaunt. Hair thinner. Expression blank. He didn't get out. Just sat there, staring at my house like he was trying to memorize it. My chest tightened. Adrenaline surged. I stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. He saw me. Straightened slightly. Lifted a hand in a half-wave, half-surrender motion. Then, he drove away. No confrontation. No shouting. No dramatic scene. Just a man sitting alone in a car, staring at the remnants of the family he'd detonated. I filed the incident with the police. Violation? No. Gray area? Absolutely. But it was documented. 3 days later, Marcus called. His voice had that tone I recognized, the one that meant, "You're not going to like this, but you need to hear it." "Daniel," he said, "your father petitioned the court for permission to send Jonah birthday cards." I actually laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "You're kidding." "I wish I were. He planted a tracking device on my son." "I know." "He streamed video from a hidden camera." "I know." "And he wants to send cards?" "Yes." "And the court is considering it?" There was a pause so long I thought the call dropped. "Judge Forrester is reviewing it." I pressed my palm against my forehead. Of course. Of course. The justice system has a remarkable talent for logic when it doesn't matter, and remarkable blindness when it does. "You don't need to panic," Marcus said. "I'm handling it." "But Daniel, this means he isn't done. Not emotionally. Not psychologically. Your mother pushes boundaries. Your father studies them." That was the line that chilled me. Because it was true. My mother was chaotic. My father was calculated. And calculated made him dangerous. That night, after Jonah went to bed, I sat in my office staring at the old evidence box the police returned. The Labubu. The tracker. The photos. The timestamp logs. Everything they'd done. Everything they'd tried to take. And I realized something. Winning in court didn't end the story. It just changed the battlefield. My parents weren't trying to regain custody anymore. They were trying to regain relevance. Access. Influence. Any foothold they could find. And I wasn't going to let them. I pulled out a notebook and began writing, not evidence this time, but strategy. A new plan. A long-term one. Because protecting Jonah wasn't a single battle. It was a lifetime mission. And I wasn't tired. Not anymore. 3 weeks after the car incident, I was finally starting to believe things had stabilized again. Jonah was thriving. Work was steady. Therapy sessions were down to once a month. Even the letters had stopped, most likely because Marcus filed a motion threatening contempt if they continued. But peace in my family never lasts more than a season. It always snaps. Always. And this time, it snapped on a Wednesday evening. Jonah was in the backyard practicing soccer drills. I was grilling chicken, one of those rare domestic, peaceful evenings when life feels almost normal. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Local area code. I answered cautiously. "Hello?" A beat of silence. Then, "Daniel." My stomach clenched. My father's voice had always been controlled. Precise. Even when he was furious, he spoke like he was delivering a quarterly report. But this voice? It was cracked. Thin. Barely held together. "What do you want?" I said, keeping my tone flat. I need to talk to you. You're violating the restraining order." "No," he said quickly. "No. I'm calling from a prepaid line. My attorney said as long as I don't contact Jonah, Robert, I said sharply. You don't get to rationalize this. You're not supposed to contact me either. Another silence. Then he whispered, Your mother tried to hurt herself. Every muscle in my body locked. He continued, stumbling over the words in a way I'd never heard. She's in the hospital. They think it was intentional. I don't know what to do. She keeps saying she has nothing left. I leaned against the porch railing, staring at Jonah chasing a ball under the fading sunlight. She did this to herself, I said quietly. I know, he whispered. I know. But she's still your mother. No, I said. She was my mother. Until she broke into my son's life like a virus. He exhaled shakily. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I need you to understand we never meant to hurt Jonah. That made something deep inside me flare. You put a camera in my child's bedroom, I said, voice low, controlled. You tracked his location for 3 weeks. You manipulated Lena. You filed a petition to take him away from me. What exactly did you think would happen? That we'd have dinner after? He didn't answer. He breathed, shallow and uneven. Please, he finally choked out. Please just tell her you don't hate her. I closed my eyes. And for a moment, for a microscopic, guilt-stained second, I saw my mother as she'd been when I was Jonah's age. Standing beside a birthday cake. Smiling with frosting on her fingers. Laughing when I blew out the candles. But that woman was gone. And the one who replaced her had chosen the path that led here. I don't hate her, I said quietly. My father inhaled sharply, like he'd been underwater. But I will never let her near my son again. The silence was long. Then, I understand, he whispered. I wish I'd understood earlier. He hung up before I could reply. I stood there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling the strange, heavy weight of complicated grief pressing against my ribs. Not for the parents I had. For the parents I wished I'd had. Jonah came running over, sweaty and smiling. Dad! Did you see my trick shot? I forced a smile. I did. It was awesome. As he ran back to the yard, I made a decision. I would not let my parents' choices bleed into Jonah's childhood any further. Not through guilt. Not through pity. Not through weakness. Their fall was tragic. But it was theirs. And I was done carrying it. That night, after Jonah fell asleep and the house settled into its gentle creaks and hums, I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. Not for drama. Just because I needed the quiet. The phone call from my father lingered in the air like fog. Not sharp. Not painful. Just heavy. The kind of weight grief carries when it isn't about losing someone you love, but losing the idea of who you thought they could have been. I stared at the glow of the microwave clock and listened to Jonah's soft snoring through the cracked bedroom door. That sound had become my compass. Every decision I'd made in the past year had been aimed at keeping that snoring safe. I wasn't about to change course now. But something in me shifted after that call. Not forgiveness. Not pity. Not weakness. Perspective. My parents had set their lives on fire, and then stood in the ashes wondering why they were cold. I couldn't warm them. I couldn't fix them. And I refused to let them drag Jonah anywhere near the wreckage. But there was one loose thread I hadn't pulled yet. A practical one. A dangerous one. A necessary one. I needed to know how far they'd gone before the camera. Before the GPS tracker. Before the custody petition. Before Lena got dragged into it. Because if they'd put that much planning into surveillance, and into manipulating my ex-wife, what else had they been doing? Who else had they contacted? What documents had they forged? What stories had they circulated? I needed the full scope. No more surprises. So the next morning, after dropping Jonah off at school, I drove to the small office suite where my father used to run his financial consulting business. A generous name for what was mostly tax prep and mediocre investment advice. The building manager was outside smoking. recognized me instantly. "Haven't seen your dad in months," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "He's been dealing with personal issues. That's one word for it." He flicked his cigarette, looked me over with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Half the town knew something had gone down, but no one had the courage, or rudeness, to ask details. "I actually need access to his old unit," I said. "For legal reasons." He didn't ask questions. Just said, "Come on," and led me inside. The office smelled like dust and forgotten ambition. Papers stacked on the desk. Old coffee stains. A computer still plugged in, blinking an idle screensaver like it had been waiting for someone who never showed. The manager left me alone with a nod. "Lock up when you're done." I sat at the computer. Same password he'd used for years. Birth year plus initials. I typed it. It worked. And what I found inside wasn't criminal. Not in the legal sense. But in the emotional sense? It was a graveyard. Emails to my ex-wife, months before she mentioned signing anything. Emails to family members, painting me as unstable. Emails to an attorney asking about early access to minors' trust funds. Budget spreadsheets titled Projected Expenses After Custody Granted. Projected expenses. Plural. I opened the first one. Trips. Casinos. Home repairs. Medical bills. Haircuts. Spa visits. Family emergency cushion fund. Projected spending from my son's inheritance before he was even 10 years old. My father hadn't simply hoped for custody. He'd planned around it. And at the bottom of the spreadsheet, written in my father's neat, accountant handwriting, was a line item that made my stomach twist. "Daniel, monthly support obligation TBD." It wasn't enough to take Jonah. They planned to make me pay them for the privilege. I closed the folder. Closed the computer. Sat there with the realization sinking in like cold water pressing against skin. There was no version of the future where reconciliation had even been possible. Not because they failed. Because they had never intended to be family again. They intended to be victors. Custody wasn't an act of love. It was a business strategy. A retirement plan wearing the mask of concern. And if Jonah had stayed with them long enough, they would have shaped him into someone who believed boundaries were cruelty, and that love meant debt. I stood, locked the office behind me, handed the key back to the building manager. "Find a new tenant," I said. "Will do." Walking to my car, I felt something subtle, but profound. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. My parents had not lost their family. They had forfeited it. And now that I finally understood the full extent of their intentions, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Because for the first time, there were no shadowy what-ifs. No lingering doubts. No, maybe someday they'll change. They had told me who they were. And I had finally listened. When I picked Jonah up from school that afternoon, he ran into my arms babbling about a science project involving vinegar and baking soda. Life. Real life. His life. And as I drove us home, with him chatting nonstop about volcanoes and eruptions and, "Dad, did you know lava isn't actually lava until it's out of the ground?" I realized. This is what I fought for. This is what I'll keep fighting for. Not revenge. Not justice. Peace. For him. For me. For the family we're building without the people who tried to dismantle it. And the story? It wasn't over. But the part involving my parents? That chapter was almost done. Almost. Because one more twist was coming. One I didn't see yet. But it was already on its way. A week later, Jonah handed me a drawing, the two of us standing in front of our house, sunlight everywhere. No grandparents in the picture. No shadows. "This is our family," he said simply. And that was it, the real ending. Not arrests, not court orders, not the past unraveling. Just my son choosing peace without even knowing it. I hung the drawing on the fridge and realized, Some stories don't end with closure. They end with freedom.